Okay, so tonight, aligning our heart and mind with our reason for being. I found this picture. I thought it works perfectly for considering our consideration tonight. So our sense of identity determines our alignment. So you can say when we default to a false sense of self, like I know there's thinking that I know there's something wrong with me, having those thoughts, having thoughts I don't really matter, I am sick, I'm only human, and stop. Okay, let's stop the rot. Let's consciously affirm our true self. So looking at, I acknowledge what is right with me and with others. I matter blended with others. I am inherently well. I am being human. I am being human. I'm not a mind. I'm not a body. I'm not my feelings. I am a being. And to actually just open up to the awareness of that identity. Upright yourself. Forbid thyself to feebleness, it mars thy warrior name. Wake, be thyself, arise. That's taken from Sir Edwin Arnold's derivation of Song Celestial, further edited, and affirming what is real and true about yourself. So if we look at it in terms of Dr. Bill Bain, and who I loved as a mentor, this is what he had to say. We have the responsibility of being identified with the nature of the truth of life. Think about that. We have the responsibility of being identified with the nature of the truth of life. That kind of puts a whole new twist on it. Rather than just trying to be identified, we have the responsibility of being identified with it, which will change our consciousness and consequently, and this is the kicker, the content of our consciousness. So let's look a little bit further at that, the content of our consciousness. So we look at being identified with the truth of life, the light that we are. Now that has to be affirmed, you can say, in our hearts. And the way our heart is positioned to receive that awareness in feeling is by keeping a heart of thankfulness, appreciation, and patience. But I coined it as one central theme, and that has to do with praise, having a heart fixed in praise. And for those of us who are biblically inclined, fixed in praise for the Lord. But how do we ground that within ourselves? It's by praising the light through others. So if you think about trying to figure out who you are, what essence you are, you simply look for the light in others and you praise that. And when you do that, it allows something to be received into our hearts, where our conscious mind is keeping our stance in that way. And that's what allows for the content of our consciousness. And if we ever notice our content of our consciousness beginning to shift, where I don't like this person, I don't like what happened here, we got to recognize our heart has been off kilter. And we're talking about being aligned with the reason for being. So we observe that. And then when that happens, it allows for our body to be, you can say, invigorated. And it allows for us to play our integrated life-giving part. And if there's anything in the essence of this whole conscious healthy aging sessions, it's really to be in position to play our part so we sustain our reason for being. So we have the body vitality for that to happen. And if we look at it in terms of this, now there's something that's been coined, and some of us have been aware of this, as the universal one law alignment. And if we look at it in terms of electrical terms, you can say there's a positive radiation from the light that we are, or we can say the positive radiation of the sun, and then you can say the response from the earth. But in terms of our own internal mechanisms, when our heart is responsive to the light that we are, because we're fixed in praise, it allows for, you can say, a charge to happen. In electrical terms, what some of my studies there, that the negative draws to the positive, and then it creates a surge where, in turn, a positive influence begins to happen, which invigorates our body, a positive charge. And something in healing, they say healing is voltage. So there has to be enough voltage coming through our body, but that voltage really stems from our orientation of our hearts with the essence that we are. And when that happens, then there's actually a flow. You can say an electrical charge of positive and negative charges with the world that we share with. So that there's actually a flow happening. And there's an influence being extended from us into our world where others are looking. Like Ray, with you, people are looking. And for each of us, people are looking for someone who's actually providing a life influence and are drawn to that. And there's certain people specifically that are drawn to us uniquely as individuals. So in terms of that alignment, now, this is a process I've coined called the messenger RNA process to use as needed. So when we're not being a messenger of light, when our alignment, say, we recognize our alignment is off, for example, something might make us really irritated, and we have that oh no feeling, and our mind begins to get twisted, we have to recognize we have a choice in that moment. And we have a choice either default to the patterns, the grooves of, you can say, of the aberrant human nature patterns of shame, fear, hate, and greed, which we're talking about conscious healthy aging, which actually accelerates the aging process. Things are rushing in on us, and we have to recognize, we have to be deliberate in those moments where we have to upright yourself, forbid thyself to feebleness, remember who you are, and breathe. So we did a little heart math. We'll do a little more tonight, but to breathe in and out, in slow, out slower, until you can remember. You have to do that as many times as it takes until you remember what you love. And when we begin to open up to that, it brings perspective. It allows for a letting go of. It allows to be actually seeing what forgiveness may play a part for ourselves, for others, and then it allows for change. This is not a rushed process. You have to allow for the change to happen, for letting go to the peace of understanding. And when that happens, we neutralize that oh no feeling or getting out of position. And it allows us to appreciate returning to the place you fill with all. Instead of having the oh no feeling, we have a sense of oh yes. Oh yes, because when we recognize those things that come up, if we can clear it ourselves and go through this process, or however process you have been using, and as it's quickened, we recognize, oh yeah, here's my opportunity to actually shift something in myself, and the realization it's going to have an influence with those in my world, especially the ones that are close to me or on my, you can say, vibrational energetic line. So staying in place. Again, we're talking about staying in place. We have five senses, sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. Those five senses have you can say neurological influences with our solar plexus, and our solar plexus relates to our subconscious mind. And when that's inactive there, you can say there's a sense of our sixth sense. Our five senses begin to actually be perceived as our sixth sense, where we have a sense of intuition of what our senses are actually bringing to us in our awareness. But there's something more in terms of this, something greater, whereas we recognize it's a perception from the world, our senses. But there is something greater that our conscious mind needs to begin to actually receive, and that relates to the seventh sense. And I think for the most part, most people don't know we have a seventh sense, which actually helps to balance our sixth sense. And our seventh sense relates to illumination. It's beyond just intuition. And that seventh sense relates to understanding perception from above. In chiropractic, we use the term above, down, inside, out. So when that happens, it allows for, you can say, something of serendipity that happens, where realizations come into your consciousness where you didn't know really where they came from. And they didn't really come from our sensing from the world, but they come from a higher plane called the seventh sense. And when we rely on only our sixth sense of perception from the world, sometimes that can be slanted with judgment and we can act out of haste. But if we're allowing for the seventh sense to occur, we're acting out of poise. So I hope you're following along with me with that. Okay. Now, what opens the seventh sense is something called soft fascination. Soft fascination is experiences of appreciation that broaden and soften your attention. They gently engage the brain's attention without unhelpfully concentrating it. So this is a picture of the Highlands, North Carolina, and a trip that Robert Kaufman and myself took last year. And Robert took this picture and I thought it was just beautiful. And being out in nature is a great way to engage the seventh sense, where it gently engages the brain with unhelpfully concentrating it. And when we're on our phone all day long or on the computer or even reading, that's directly engaging the brain, where we need to spend time with gently engaging the brain's attention without unhelpfully concentrating it. Okay. This brings replenishment, serendipity, and alignment of heart and mind. Okay. Soft fascination from the ages. Remember this quotation. I'm sure you may have heard of it before, but whatever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think and appreciate and refresh on these things. Not just think about it, but feel the refreshment that comes from considering the things in your heart that are true, that are honest, that are just. And you think about just, there's something called righteous indignation, where you can say this is beautiful, but there's certain things when we become conscious of things that really are not the things to do, we actually can call those out within our own consciousness and share them accordingly with others, actually see the just of certain things, the things that are pure, the things that are lovely, the things that have been proven out with good report. And that's from Philippians 4:8. Soft fascination from the ages. Okay, alignment meditation. So let's see if we can put these pieces together. So let's upright ourselves, and we can upright ourselves, put our hands on our heart. And we can close our eyes if you like there. And begin to breathe. Breathe in slow. And breathe out slower. Breathing in slow. And breathe out slower. Again, breathing in slow. And breathing out slower. And begin to see what you need to let go of in this moment. Maybe apply forgiveness. Let go to that seventh sense. Consider what is honest and true, lovely, pure. Feel the feeling of that. Allow that to bring calm in our heart, in our hearts. Allow it to bring a vision as it would. A vision from above, down, inside out. Allow it to feel the feeling of our unification together. That allows for us to have greater consciousness for the influence that we extend individually and with those that we're with. And let an influence extend to those that you know that are specifically on your line. See them in your mind and feel them in your heart. And let your blessing go out to them. now, in this moment. And as you breathe in, breathe out that blessing to all. Let them feel the invigoration of thy strength of character, of what's true in yourself. And affirm the reason for being of your influence here and now on earth, in form. Affirm that and arise in thy true self, acknowledging thy true influence, affirming that now, that moments may come up later or tomorrow, that we reaffirm what we feel now, the influence that we extend to all. Breathing in slow and out slower. Influencing our worlds positively. Influencing people, influencing all of nature, plants, animals, and even beyond. So let's continue on, and we'll complete our meditation. And 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm going to take a moment now, and if you have pen and paper or something to write on, how will you align your heart and mind? So take a moment now to consider that. And if you can, be good to write it down. Okay, great. Okay, let me just close this off. Okay, now when vision gets cloudy, just a little further, now when vision gets cloudy, there's something called shift points. And those are points you can say we made progress, and then we feel like there's a dip, and then we can become discouraged. And it's been coined as the abyss of nothingness, where we're moving along, we're realizing our sense of being, we're feeling good with being aligned with that. And then through the cycles of time, there can be certain points where there could be a sense of discouragement. And that's a time to, again, recognize as a shift point for something greater. One of my favorite movies, some of you may have watched it, is the 1937 version of Lost Horizon. And in Conway, where they're a group of British folks, Westerners, are basically kidnapped to Shangri-La, and they don't know why. And Conway's brother is very discouraged, where he doesn't know what's going to happen. And he was talking to his brother about it. And Conway says to him, I don't know what's going to happen, but that's what's on the other side of the hill, with kind of a smile on his face, where he was just curious. That's what's on the other side of the hill. So even for ourselves, to recognize shift points are set for something greater to occur, provided we stay in the flow of it. And during those times, it's a time to empty out of old controls. You can say, in working with people, maybe emptying out of controls where we may spend too much time with those that we serve. We're finding the times that we can make them more succinct. And then a time to give thanks for the point in the cycle that we're at, the phase in the cycle that we're at. And we give thanks and we serve. We give. We hold steady during those times. And so it allows for, you can say, a natural progression of the life force that would have us rise again. Again, no one heals in a straight line, but there's rhythms to that, rhythms and cycles to it. And we recognize when we get to a point where we have a peak, a friend of mine used to say, our peaks are greased. So when we get to a peak, if we become a little self-conscious or like self-arrogant about that, and we don't maintain our humility and our recognition of keeping our heart fixed in praise, then we can slide down. We can take ourselves out of those cycles. So there's certain critical points in peaks, and you can say in lull points, like lull in the cycle. So it's something to be careful of that. So let's consider this more in terms of what has come to mind for you so far in our talk about staying aligned with our reason for being.